Hello and welcome back once again to the Inquisitor podcast with me, Marcus Tauki. Today I have a pair of guests, the co-authors of Graphic Sales, How to Build a Prospecting Playbook. And I've worked with Tom, I haven't worked with Peter before, but they've come up with a really innovative way of communicating how to build a serious prospecting system. And we're going to explore it. So without any further ado, I want Peter and Tom to introduce themselves. So Peter, let's start with you. Can you give us 30 to 90 seconds on your history?
Thank you, Marcus. Appreciate it. So yeah, I've been in sales for 20 plus years. Been a salesperson. My first job out of the gate, out of college, was knocking doors, selling cable door to door. So I started at the lowest of low and built my way up where I was a GM of sales. Then I was a senior sales director of sales engineering for the Northeast. And so I've had a lot of experience building teams, going through the dot-com crash, going through different areas, so ebbs and flows, and just saw what it took to be successful. And Tom and I have known each other since college, and we have a lot of good conversations about what actually good looks like, and what are the consistencies that needed, and we came up with this idea for the playbook. And so I think I have a lot of experience in the trenches. Is my experience is why I'm here.
Excellent. And Tom?
Yeah, as you know, I'm as old as Peter, so I've been around a long time too. I actually spent about 15 years in marketing in tech startups before I fell into a B2B sales role and leadership role. Did that for a while, and then I went out on my own. And for the past 12, 13 years, I've been working with scale-ups, enterprises, mid-market startups, and just trying to fix the old go-to-market engine with a heavy focus on outbound selling as a primary driver of my business over the last 8 years, I guess.
Excellent. So when I asked both of you what you wanted listeners to take away from this episode, you said you wanted them to remember you as entertaining, useful, and as a mirror of the book, but to lead with practical knowledge about prospecting and storytelling. So let's start there. Why does sales need a mirror? Tom?
It's a tough gig to be a salesperson, right? And it comes with a lot of hubris, I think, and that the culture often is competitive. So I think that the mirror is designed to show you that you shouldn't be focusing on yourself. You should be focusing on the customer, and they should be 100% of your focus. But the flip side is that it's really difficult to do that. You get beat up a lot. There's a lot of hard stories and funny stories, and that you also have to laugh at it and know that you're not alone in this journey of this difficult occupation.
Nothing like scar tissue to be your best teacher.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The book is, while it's got the good learning about how to build a playbook, we have a lot of comics in there, and they are all what not to do, and they're true stories from our past. And they're funny, they're entertaining, but they're also a warning. Like, this is what happens when you've got, as Tom said, the hubris, or you're not doing, as I've always said, is like the sales is the easiest, hardest job out there. It's easy because once you really understand and you understand what needs to be done, you can be successful, and it is something you can teach yourself. It's not something like, hey, I've got a great personality, so I'm a great salesperson. There's a lot more to that. Being charismatic is nice, but you need to have a playbook. But it's hard to constantly follow that. And it's hard to, like, once you have success, to say, oh, I can take shortcuts. Like, you can't. If you want to be successful, you got to do this stuff over and over, and that's the hard part. Is maintaining that. Maintaining your the cadence of every day of doing what's right.
So how much of the book is made up of your own frequent acts of stupidity and self-sabotage?
I'd like to say it's all somebody else.
Well, there's one story that's clearly because I'm the character, the young version of me. So there's at least one that I'm guilty of. I don't remember Peter.
Yeah, I keep those to myself. I like to show myself as a man on the hill that's wise and just. But I have plenty of stories. And that's a good point. I should write some more about myself. But to give me a little bit of credit, there's been a lot of insane people around me that I've taken stories from, and there's a couple of characters in there I'm like, I can't believe this. And Tom and I just wrote one the other day that it's insane what what the salesperson did.
I called Peter and I'm like, I don't believe this. This can't really have happened. He's like, oh, it happened. All right.
Go on, spill.
Yeah.
So what happened?
In this case, well, the story is going to come out, but a sales rep that was sitting in a cube, we're in the early 90s, dialing, and he can't get through to a customer prospect, and he's been trying forever, and finally he calls him up, he tells him that he's a famous hockey player and he found the decision maker's wallet. So he's like, I found Brian's wallet. This is Ray Bork from the Bruins. And it got right through to the guy. The guy's like, oh my God, you found my wallet. It's Ray Bork. I can't believe it. The guy's like, no, I'm Peter from telco, and I'm just calling just because I haven't been able to get through to you, and I want to talk to you about your telecom spend. The guy was so angry and hung up, and I'm like, what do you think was going to happen? What possible
like
outcome?
starting on a lie.
Right. So so there's a lot of those type of like, wow, don't do that, people. Here's something not to do.
Well, Arthur Dunn said, if the truth won't sell it, don't sell it. And that maxim is key to all of my work. But what I'm conscious of is that in many sales orgs, lying, fabricating, exaggerating, omitting material information is considered to be best practice. It isn't. If you start on a lie, they may forgive you, but they're never going to forget. And in a world where trust is in very short supply, you do not want to squander your reputation by starting with a fib.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can't find out the business need and solve their problems, but you come across even the slight stuff. I had this sales rep who ended up being unbelievable sales rep, but one of the good lessons he learned is he was given a great opportunity, gave the prospect the quote. When it came time to sign, the quote was off by a couple $100. Because he's like, he just rounded it up or rounded down when he gave him the original quote, and then when the official paperwork, and the customer was really upset. And I'm like, you have to be exact in this business. Like this is their budget, this is their numbers, and it comes across that you're sloppy. And what else did you miss? What else are you not telling them? What else is you think is not a big deal? And it's true. You got to be honest.
Well, this speaks to the work of Clay Christensen and Bob Mester, where they talk about first use. First use must be precisely what was expected. Anything more, anything less. And so Charlie Green, who was one of the co-authors of The Trusted Advisor and Trust-Based Selling, said, if you under-promise and over-deliver, you've lied to me twice. It has to be exact, because if at the first use, expectation is not met exactly, buyer's remorse sets in.
I can't believe I influenced all these people. That's great.
Excellent. All the way from the grave in Clay's case. So, Peter, what are the parts of sales that people experience frequently but rarely talk about honestly?
They're salespeople. They don't talk about their failures, right? I won this big deal. Everything is the positive in how much the person sold the deal. And I think that there's two things missing from that I always tell people, Mike, listen, talking about the wins is great, but talking about the losses is better. Like, why did we lose? Let's analyze this. And then second to that is how much the team helped, right? Salespeople are the tip of the spear, but there's a lot of people behind them finding success. So I think if you're really focusing on those two things, being self-reflective, like, why did I lose this deal? What happened? Is it an outside situation? Is it a me situation? Or did I not bring the right team members? Did I bring people in the wrong place? So there's a lot to reflect on. And if you're only reflecting on your wins, you're kind of losing out on 90% of why you win business.
When I set up in business about 25, 30 years ago, I realized after about a month that there were a lot of people who were out there and broken and messing up just like me. So I've made a living essentially becoming an object lesson and getting paid to fix us both. But one of the things that really fascinates me is lack of practice and preparation, pre-call planning, and then lack of post-call debriefing. So Tom, just expand on that a little bit, because I think it's critical that middle management particularly understand the importance of this as part of their coaching role.
Yeah, I am. One of my biggest points of anger with any company team I work with, or even when I take a discovery call with a rep, is the lack of preparation, right? The lack of pre-call planning, which is not a difficult act. There's a system for it. The day before, review the notes of the BDR who booked you the meeting, or that you booked it, do the research, create your strategy, and then 7 minutes before the meeting, open it up, get your game face on. Like, it's a pretty much, it's documented, it's detailed, it's not hard. And most reps don't do it. And that discovery call, the first call usually is where they don't do it. They might do it for a demo later on. You get into the deal, there's maybe more preparation seen, but that first one is very unprepared for. And one of the things that drives me crazy is it took the rep, or it took marketing, or it took a BDR, hundreds of attempts to get that meeting. And then you've got an account executive that is just showing up and winging it. And then the post debrief, it's almost non-existent, Marcus. I don't think that most like managers have any kind of cadence of like a standardized post-call debrief. There's usually like a check-in on a pipeline call or something, but there's never the, how did the game plan go? What worked? What didn't? We have all these tools to analyze it now. It couldn't be easier, but the same sort of laziness moving on to the next thing is, fundamentally missing unless, you're seeing better practices out there.
Oh God, no. Um, I wish. But one of the things that I always implement with my clients is a red teaming exercise. So everyone gets a chance to be in the hot seat. You're kind to the person, but hard on the process. And everyone has to listen to that one call. They then debrief it individually, and we gather lessons. And the red teaming then forms part of the pre-call planning for the next conversation. Losses are incredibly instructive because from there you can improve your process. You can get ahead of the objections. You can start building a lesson capture form of some sort that allows you to build a shared document that allows managers to apply the rule of three before me. Managers suffer from upward delegation. So one of my
Mhm.
favorite questions to equip managers with is, what are the three things that you've tried before you came to me that didn't work? When they say, well, I haven't, off you go, come back in 3 hours and 17 minutes, give them some weird time and say, I've got a gap in my calendar, 12 minutes, come back at 4:15, and I'll give you 12 minutes. But on that one piece of paper, I want the three things that you tried that didn't work and the one question you want me to help you answer. And that typically recovers 1 to 2 hours per manager per day.
Mhm. So I think of this conversation is two things I think we've kind of mentioned but not talked about, which is it's the culture you build, right? You have to be. There's a couple of things you talk about there. That is, the leadership and the salespeople have to be coachable. They have to be willing to take, feedback, positive intent. I'm not here to diminish you. I'm not here to yell at you. I'm here to help you and get better. First of all, you have to have, Tom and I have talked about this before. You've got a lot of managers who are basically just, spreadsheet jockeys and haven't really been coached properly. And to be a good manager and support their people, put them in that trust environment. That, hey, when I talk to you and I give you feedback as positive intent, and be willing to make those be coachable. And I think when we go back to the book, that's a big part of what Tom and I want to kind of get across is, listen, you've got to learn from this. This is a safe place. We enjoy coaching people. The reason why we have the negative is like things happen. Things could get bad, but you can always get better. And so learn from those mistakes, learn from what you have. And I think the culture thing, when you write books like this, it's hard not to then dive deep into saying, this is all well and good, but if you don't build the right culture around this stuff, you're not going to get what you want out of this, because people have defenses up. The defense gets up. They think they're doing it right themselves, or their way's better. So I think that's a big part of
Well,
being.
sorry to cut across you. I think to build on that,
Yeah.
it's really important that when you're doing your pre-call planning and post-call debriefing, that you're also mapping the customer's internal
Mhm.
journey. And in the book, you talk about mapping the persona. But I would also take it just a little step further, which is you need to map where they are in their own buying journey. Are they
Mhm.
at a center of dissatisfaction when they're not ready really to have a sales conversation? Are they making space for the idea? So they're trying to work out what the hell the problem is and put their finger on it. Are they passive looking, where they're trying to learn what options are available out in the market and how they might fix it? Are they actively looking, where they're exploring what their options are? Are they at the point of deciding, where they're making trade-offs? And tie that back to the persona as well, in terms of where they are in their job life cycle, which again, as Tom said, you can go onto LinkedIn, you can see how long they've been in post. Are they
Mhm.
in their honeymoon period? Have they been there for a couple of years? Do they look like they're at the point where they're going to be looking for their next job? Because if you don't meet your customer where they are, then in all probability, you're not going to be timely, you're not going to be relevant, and you're not going to be personally valuable. And a buyer is only going to champion you and take you to other people where it travels to the second room, typically to their boss, if they feel like the risk is worthwhile and they're not going to suffer because they've wasted their political capital. Tom, let's talk about how you guys built the whole part of the playbook around ICP and persona, because I think that is really where the meat and grist is.
Yeah, that was well, I would say the most important part of the book and why we start there. we talked a lot about ideal customer profile and personas because it's what I see a lot of teams is they're just pointing reps at what they think is a target. Or, right, I deal with a lot of scale ups and they're like, we need to go after another market, right? So let's go after another vertical. And they've not thought through, and Peter was instrumental in sort of like the best process for doing this, being data driven, is that, what are the real attributes that make, your solution right for a particular buyer? That they're in a particular industry doesn't necessarily mean that they've got the DNA that your solution can solve for. So we focused a lot on that. Like, how should you actually think about the market you're going after? How should you analyze the data you have today to identify the 4 to 6 attributes? Because we're talking about prospecting, right? We'll get into the deal later and really go deeper. But for a prospector, we're looking at like critical thinking about the signals that are in the market and how to read them. So what are those attributes of a company? And then like what sort of you described is that once we get to the company, what are the attributes of the individual, right? And how do you map those with data you have, and how do you think about it? When it comes to like application, like this is, I think, one of the more fun and interesting things about a salesperson is that to sort of psychoanalyze those data points online, like you said, like, hey, you found a target that meets they're at the right company, they're in the right role, they have the right title, but they started there a month ago, right? So what did they do before? And why are they at this company now? Maybe they were brought in as a change maker, right? The last company maybe grew up to a certain point and was sold. They were there at that point in time. They got into the job. Like this sort of critical thinking about like what those data points mean, I find that really interesting. And when a salesperson does that, when they make that prospecting call or email and have thought about it, then they're testing a theory about the what you thought about them. You're taking an interest in a human being, like as opposed to like I'm pitching you something. So I think all of that is like the essence of all the other things that come after is your outreach strategy. It all starts with, do you know who, do you know why, and then when you see it out there, how do you think about what those things mean, and how do you open a conversation with someone? So that, yeah, we had to start there.
Well, I think you touched on something really important there, which is that if a manager is doing their job right, what they're going to do is make heroics unnecessary.
Mhm.
And they're going to improve judgment. The practice, the preparation, the pre-call planning, that's all key. But what we want is the salesperson to be able to judge in the moment and make good decisions with limited information. But they have the ability to prepare. And the failure to prepare means that they are delinquent in their role. So when I look at and when I listen to calls and when I'm on the receiving end of some pretty shoddy outreach, history tells me that you only have a very short window, and that window closes rapidly if you're not timely, if you're not relevant, if you're not personally valuable. So, what would you say to salespeople in terms of really understanding the context in which your buyer or your prospect is operating, Peter?
So if research beforehand is really important, but it's really difficult. But you got to get the person talking, right? Know their industry, do the research. You can ask poignant questions. To Tom's standpoint, there's a lot of different ways to do this as them personally, so forth. But I think anything in sales is starting a conversation, trying to find out the business pain points and the business needs of the company, what they're doing, not pitching what your solution is without making assumptions. So, I'm just falling back to it's trying to pull the person out of their shell to have a conversation about the business. Does that make sense?
It does. I think too often prospecting is done at a very shallow surface level,
Yeah.
where it's about the functional risk that the buyer is trying to address. But the best prospectors I know are able to get the prospect talking about the social and political risks that they're facing. Because it's all well and good selling someone something at your sponsor or even your champion level. But if it doesn't carry into the rest of the organization, if it doesn't travel to the second room unedited, and for their boss to say, yeah, Peter, absolutely, this makes sense. Let's take it to the allocation committee, which is the third room. Then it's going to die, and you're going to end up with that big, constipated, bloated middle of the funnel. But you also have to take into account, are they ready to take on the change that you're selling them? Because everybody sells only one thing, which is change.
Yep.
And if the business is not ready and they haven't galvanized all the different owners, the problem owner, the process owner, the outcome owner, the risk avoider, the invisible influencers, the person who's going to have to take it on day two after they've got it. All of those different people. If you're selling enterprise, certainly. I mean, if you're selling something for $500 and it's a one call close, fine. But our audiences are largely selling
Yeah.
big ticket, high risk, and the risk of getting it wrong means that it's very hard to reverse, and it could be career limiting. So we need to factor that into our conversations. And often I think the haste to book a meeting, book a demo, book revenue
Yeah.
is
That
killing things. So sorry, go ahead.
Well,
I'm saying that drives me nuts. Like, I've got to get the POC, got to get the POC, got to get the demos. I'm like, slow it down. What are we solving for? And Tom, I know you want to go, but I'm going to go back to earlier as you're mentioning all this stuff. That is why it's crucial to have conversations with your team members, your leadership, and your other team members, because there's things they're gonna bring out that you didn't think about. Because there's a lot going involved. As you mentioned, it's not only what that customer's going through, but then you're going to talk about the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, doubt that the incumbent is putting into the customer, fear of change, right? You don't get the old saying we had way back in the days, nobody gets fired for choosing AT&T. Well, they don't, so if they're staying with them, that customer is comfortable, but it's all part of the conversation. You have to have, if you're in sales, you have to see all around all these corners and have a strategy around all of it. And how do you address that and how do you attack that? So everything I think you brought up and everything we've been talking about is right, but it all comes back to think about it, strategize about it, have a plan in place, understand how to attack the marketplace. So Tom, sorry.
Yeah, I want to bring it back to the prospecting aspect of this, because I agree everything that you're saying. But if we think about a lot of the prospectors today, right? They're young people, right? It's often an early job called an SDR or BDR or something like that. And they're thrown out there to start the conversation with someone that could be a potential customer, that then you have to go through all the stages that we're talking about now. One of the problems I see is that, and it's not the rep's fault, and it's part of the reason we wrote the book, is that the management level, the ICP, the persona, those things are not being thought through and not being taught to the front line. And why I think that AI isn't going to solve this problem is because it's not you can't just encapsulate the research and throw it into an AI generated email, a LinkedIn connection. The critical thinking that the front line has to do to get your attention and to try and find that fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and understand your problem well enough that you'll even talk to us and get into a buying conversation is an enormous challenge. And the front lines aren't being taught properly how to do that. And that's sort of the book is for sales leaders, because it's you have to think through this stuff. And arm your team to think critically about these data points, and then how to engage in a conversation properly to open the door for a potential sales conversation.
Well, I think there's something really important that most organizations miss, and it speaks to the lack of maturity in middle management and leadership, which is haste is different from speed. And I think most people prospect with haste. And the net result is that they're going after getting that one meeting with one person. My view is that the SDR should be multi-threading and having multiple conversations. So when they get in front of the person who can actually make a decision, then they've done all of their primary research. They understand the customer's business better than the customer does. And this is a really important bit, which I see over and over again, because in 30 years of looking at other people's CRM, I can honestly say I've never seen one that is better than 20% filled with useful information. And it's the handoff notes. And the net result is that you end up with AEs going in and starting all over again and recapping conversations that the buyer has already had, probably once or twice or 100 times. And that diminishes your trustworthiness and your standing in the eyes of your prospect.
Yes.
So that will slow the sale down. So what advice would you give to management around encouraging SDRs to do a proper job of multi-threading and a proper job of handoff? Peter,
Yeah.
how's that gone?
if you mind if I go on that one first, Peter. So there's a couple of ways to do it if you can think long term, right? Like sales always does is think short term. So I've seen some amazing organizations where they have a pod structure where you start as an SDR and you're on a team in a region, you have some kind of regional or vertical alignment, and you're working with an account executive and a sales engineer that started in that role, right? So your progression is you're working a certain market into a larger role. And what happened, this again was very long term, 7 or 8 years, is that the same rep that was an SDR working an account ultimately became an AE. And so had that history, not only was it in the CRM, but was involved in it. And because of that and the effectiveness they had, they were mentoring the new SDRs like, hey, when we work, we multi-thread, we learn, you're going to be in my seat someday. So that's the ideal, right? That you build a system that encourages it long-term and a full mentorship cycle. The short term is really, educational, right? Teaching the SDR that like your meeting quota for the month or the quarter has a ramp and a value that's associated with true pipeline generation. So you're not being incentivized to just find that one person, hit it, drop it, and run. It's that no, we want coverage because you're going to be a part of the deal. You're going to get paid on that. So there's all these systems. I think you have to build systems to encourage good behavior, and then build systems where there's a career path, because as a manager, most managers are overworked. They can't coach everybody. But if you built a culture where the senior folks want to mentor because they were there before, right? Now you're building an engine, a system that is scalable in an effective way. It's got to be long-term, Marcus. It's the only way to really solve those problems.
I agree with 98% of what you said, but I'm going to have to pick you up on the 2%.
Okay.
They do bloody well have time. They're just choosing to spend it on pointless shit. And they're wasting it on optics, theatrics, trying to make sure that what they say lands safely with upper management. And it just drives me insane. One of the books that I've written speaks about how messages get diluted and massaged and veneered and varnished. And by the time they reach the people who are about to make an important critical decision, an investment, decide on a hiring spree or some other significant act, they're acting on very tainted information because they're not looking for evidence, they're looking for narrative. And managers absolutely do have time. If they're not player managers, if they are not spending their time faffing around trying to focus on activity, and what they're really focused on is meaningful motion that is advancing the opportunity or disqualifying it quickly, and prioritizing their time. Yes, I get it that many of them feel pressured and pushed and all of that sort of gubbins. But the reality is that is a choice. It's a decision that they have made. And I fundamentally believe that managers should be willing to go to work and get fired every day because they tell the truth upwards. And whilst that's a hard lesson to learn, the ones who do, and I can think of a dozen off the top of my head, people like Adam Wilcox and Teddy Peck. These are guys who don't mind telling the truth to upper management. Gary Butters has done 15 exits from PE, and he will not lie, or he tells the leadership, if you want me to put this into the forecast, then you have to understand it isn't going to happen, and I will not be accountable for it. So you choose. And they say, oh, well, that won't look good to the board. So what? The board needs to operate off the truth, not a bunch of fiction. See a lot of nodding there, Peter.
Yeah. Yes. It's funny. I was just talking to somebody the other day. I was talking to my daughter, and I have a good friend who's the sales VP when I was a sales engineering director, and we're good friends. And one of the things he used to say all the time is like the reason why I was never going to be go to the president level is because I spoke too honestly. And I'm like, and I tell my daughter that all the time, like, you know what, you got to be who you are, but you can do more with the right information than you can with just saying something, because nothing would get me angrier than knowing somebody knew what the right decision was but chose the wrong road because it's what their leadership wanted to do, and they didn't have the balls to stand up to them and just tell them like, this is not going to work. Yeah, there's a lot of examples of that, like just people choosing to make the easy way out, just to do what their bosses say, and then not take any ownership of why it failed, and when you knew why.
And ultimately, leaders like the truth. They actually, I deal with a lot of CEOs. Well, hold on a second.
Debatable.
Hold on a second.
I'm with Peter on this one.
Let me give you 2 examples then.
But I'll tell you, vice presidents like to get their stock options, and they don't care how they get it.
Well, I
Go
have
ahead, Tom.
maybe I
Sorry.
happen to work with the better some of the better companies, but I
All
like
right.
a lot of CEOs are like, I can't go to a board meeting with another forecast we didn't hit, right? They need that fixed. I have another client recently where we went in, they had a pipeline very like it was where it was supposed to be. And but they're like, we don't know if we can trust it. So we redefined the stages. I gave them, we worked with the sales team. I'm like, now go through the pipeline and clean it up based on this criteria. It dropped it down 2/3. And we took that to the president, who then took it to the leadership committee and the board. And frankly, they couldn't be happier, because then month after month, it started to show like, whoa, it's accurate now. We can trust it. In the 3 years we've been here, we've never had a sales leader come into a meeting and say they know what we're going to close and why. And they were delighted, because now they knew what they had to do to get there. So maybe they're just the right kind of people that I happen to work with, but there are leaders out there that want the cold, hard truth.
Well, one of my pals, Gary Butters, who I just mentioned, his starting point as CRO is always to go and speak to operations. And this is great advice for SDRs and AEs. Go and speak to the ops people and ask them, what are the kind of projects you love to work on, that when you do it, you get outstanding feedback and you can do it blindfold. Then go and look at the pipeline that you've inherited and see how much of that pipeline looks like those projects. Chances are you will clear 80% of your fictional pipeline out, because that is just dead work. They're people I would class as anti-ICP. They could buy, but they won't. And if you sold to them, you'd regret it.
Mhm.
And the moment you start thinking like that, and I'm minded of Chris Dannum, who was Zig Ziglar's bagman for 30 years. And he said when he prospects for customers for life. And I think SDRs and AEs who have to fill their pipeline, if they approach it with that attitude, and you knew that you were going to be working with these people for 10, 20, 30, and in many Gen Z's cases, probably 40 plus years, how would you approach your prospecting differently? What would you not do?
Yeah.
That's a brilliant way to look at it, right? Because, and if they could just see their careers, right? It's like, okay, you might not be at the same company, but like my customers from 30 years ago, there's some I still know. Like, life moves fast, right? Oh, that's such a great way to look at it, Marcus. Yeah, I'm stealing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. We had reminds me of a story. We were doing extremely well in my office post dot-com crash, and we're building it back up. And the team was doing well. We all ended up going to Hawaii President's Club, the whole office except for the assistant. So we did extremely well. But the reason we did extremely well is because we had a target count profile, an ICP. The team was very well structured. We had the example is we had one customer. We had these two customers. We were in New York City, second day of last month to close this deal that was going to make our month. And the customer basically apologized. He's basically said, he's like, I know I promised you guys to sign. He's like, I can't. I'm going to sign it. I can sign it next week. Just couldn't get everything approved and budget wise, so I can't do it. And I'm in his office in New York City. And I said, hey, you get a couple minutes? I'm sorry, I have to leave for a couple minutes. You mind? He's like, no, not at all. He's like, I do apologize. So the rep stayed there talking to him. This guy's name was Thad, and I left. And I called another customer who I knew wanted to do business in a month and a half. And I'm like, hey, is there any way we can pull this in? I promise you we won't install it until you need to, but I just need the paperwork. He's like, you don't even have to ask. Send me the paperwork. And it was all based because we had this great relationship. We had trust, and he trusted us that, hey, I need this. I know you're not going to pull one over on me. Send the paperwork. I understand what you're going through. And he signed the paperwork that day. And so we were able to kind of flip things around and hit our numbers. But to your point, and I think the sales reps that worked with me at the time are still good friends, and they will always say that environment where they could just do the right things, sell to the right people, and not worry about hitting a number, but worried about, is this the right thing for them and the right thing for us? They had more success in that environment. And again, the story's about how I'm really, really good.
So in terms of the book itself, I'm really curious. When you're turning a sales lesson into a scene, and this is really so that managers can coach and use the book well, how do you keep it human rather than instructional?
Tom?
So
did you feel the bus going over you then?
Yeah. So I think, again, this is a bit of a long game. We wrote scripts for a year before we actually found an artist, and then we adapted. And I think that there was this really this was fun, Marcus. Peter and I would iterate on the phone or over Google, share a Google sheet. And like the story was really what came first, and we fell into this sort of narrative quality through experimentation and just like trying to learn as we go, where we would introduce it. And everything I want lessons, right? I I work with teams and consultants. So I thought of it, and Peter was a bit of a yang, like the story is what hits, it's got to be the story. So we evolved into this, like, we're the narrators with personalities that kind of match our personalities, and we'll introduce a point, and then the story, which came first, by the way. It's always the story. We look into our past and look at, like, what disaster story do we have? Does this relate to, something that could be some, we even put them into categories, Marcus. Like, some have no point. They're just unbelievably outrageous, and they're kind of standalones where there's no lesson. And there are some of those in there, but most of them seem like, hey, this is how not to do something. So the story came first, and we would kind of bookend it with a lead in, and then I would try to bring the close into, a hint of the lesson. But it's mostly about the story. Well, we hope it entertains first.
I think, I think when Tom and I first started talking about it, it was like, hey, Tom, you're a consultant. Consultants write books. Write a book. And then I'm like, I have stories I just want to tell because I think they're funny. And so we ended up having conversations on what's it to be. And Tom was like, it's like the Reese's peanut butter, or you get chocolate, my peanut butter. Like, he's like, I want to basically, it's going to be a lesson you can learn because I'm a consultant. I got to get my message across. And I'm like, the story's better. I got to tell a story. But we ended up like, well, it's Aesop's Fables. I'm like, let's tell a story with a meaning behind it. And so we craft the stories and get the meaning there. So it's easier. We felt it was easier when you go into each chapter with a good comic that's kind of like, it makes you laugh and brings down your guard, right? Okay, this is funny. This stuff has happened. What is this trying to tell me, and how can I avoid this tragedy that happened in this comic? So that's how we're trying to get, not just to tell you what to do, but break down your guard, saying, yep, this is stuff that's happened out there. This is how you avoid this disaster, and that's the lesson we're trying to teach you.
So to segue from that, if the leader gave the book to their team, what conversation would you hope it starts, and which chapter would you want the sales manager to discuss with their team first, and why?
That's a good question. I think I've been waiting for an hour. I think there's the section on, we talked about before, the ICP, right? There's so much, there's so much that evolves around it. It needs to do, like, if you're going to truly build an ICP, you have to have a strong culture, you have to have communication, you have to do all the things we talked about. So I think that ICP chapter is the heart of the, is the essence of what we're trying to get across to people. It's like, this is something, it seems simple. It's a lot of conversation. You got to bring a team into it. You've got to build a good culture around this thing. You've got to have good leadership. You've got to build a good funnel. You've got to have that ICP chapter is. And so I want people to have, what I'm hoping is, it drives conversation. It allows people to have very open conversation, like, okay, is this prospect the right prospect for me? I made this appointment. Is it worthwhile to go on this appointment? Or am I wasting my time on this? Does it fit? So having conversations about this, and not being, and so many times you hear people, salespeople, like, this is your own business, your own island, you're driving yourself. I'm like, you're not. You're in this machine that's to help you be successful, and they're set up to be successful. So I hope this drives conversation, the right conversations with your team.
So, Tom, let me ask you this. Maybe I'll get an answer to the chapter then. Which chapter do you think creates the biggest, oh shit, that's us moment?
Well, I'm going to disappoint you and agree with Peter, because it's the first thing I do with every client. I'm like, what's our ICP? No, what's really our ICP? And it's infrequent that it's well-defined, well-thought, data-driven, and everything trickles down because the personas are connected to the ideal customer profile, right? And then how we reach out to them. So every workshop, every client engagement, I'm like, okay, who are we selling to and why? What's their world? I don't even care about your product, right? Like, when we do onboarding programs, I'm like, we're not going to talk about the company or the product in the first week. We're going to focus entirely on your buyer's world, what they suffer from, the problems they have related to how we can help them. So yeah, it's the foundation. It's 100% focus on the client. And so that chapter is the reason it's the first chapter, is you got to get that right.
I think the answer to my next question is, for a sales team that's got plenty of activity but not enough quality conversations, where do you start? And I think it comes back to ICP again. Fair?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, and critical thinking too, Marcus, right? Like, again, it's one thing to have these attributes. It's one thing to get the signals. I have one little story here. I had a team that started using AI to, find the signals, like the ICP, right? Which was great, right? It was saving research time. And then it was being fed to the reps, and the reps were given bullet points, and they were using a dialer, and the bullet points popped up. Their conversion rates went down. And I was like, what did I miss? So I interviewed them. And what I realized I missed is that we had broken their critical thinking. They're like, I don't have time to verify the information. So I don't trust it. I don't have time to think about how those parts. So something I taught the team to do, I had broken with the operations team in an attempt to make things faster and easier using AI to find the signals, the data points that made it an ideal customer profile. So we stopped it. I mean, we still used AI, but then the reps were allowed time to research, think about it, verify it. Conversion rates went back up.
Well, I think AI is a brilliant resource, but the problem is it amplifies what you're already doing. And if you're doing something that is bad, it's going to make it louder and faster and more voluminous. Um, and the whole essence of the stuff that you and I worked on is really about driving better judgment, and teaching salespeople to think as the customer, not about the customer. Understanding that they are renting an outcome, they're not buying your software or your products or
Mhm.
services. They're trying to achieve a better future, but what they're also doing is they're filtering for risk. They're filtering for what's affordable, not affordable, what's compulsory. They're filtering for function. They're filtering for the social and political impact. They're filtering for the personal and emotional impact as well. And if you as a rep are just taking what AI is spitting out and you're not filtering it through that 3 by 3 matrix, odds are you're going to come out sounding either like a robot or an idiot. And your message will not land because you'll be pitching, you won't be discovering. And I think this is one of the other areas that I see too often in the whole prospecting and sales lifecycle is demoing should be a discovery process.
Mhm.
It should be a means of helping the buyer advance towards the outcome, not show how your flashy whirly gig does whatever it is that it does. And so, from a management perspective, Peter, I'd really love your take on what advice you would give to management and leaders so that they stop treating the customer as a transaction and they stop treating their reps as a means of just regurgitating a churned out message, so that the customer derives real value from the moment they are hiring by letting that salesperson into their life for a moment.
Yeah, this is something that it's Tom mentioned, we've all mentioned like, okay, what are the outcomes for this customer? What's the business need for this customer? And I think what it amazed me about sales leaders when I was coaching a sales reps, sales managers, they're they're not taking their own needs. Like listen, you don't do that. You want outcomes as a sales manager. You're driving towards outcomes. You're driving towards efficiencies. Why can't you relate that to your customers? Also look for outcomes. What are their business needs? Why are they doing business? We're all in this. We're all working to drive to outcomes. So you're trying to sell them, and you're trying to take the AI example, the demo example. Way I always tell people, I'm like, you want to use something that moves things forward, as you said. It's not a shortcut. Don't use a demo as a shortcut. Don't use AI as a shortcut. Use it when it's needed to move that along the process to show the customer the outcome that they need and understand what their business outcomes they're driving for. So I always tell the sales managers, I'm like, that you need to have a specific outcome. Find out what that outcome is that your client, your customer wants. What are they trying to drive towards? And you have to figure out a way to help them see that you're helping them hit their outcome.
We've come to time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
My take on the book is it's not that buyers hate being sold to; they hate being sold to badly. And
Yes.
the problem is not lack of effort, laziness, or stupidity. More often than not, it's lack of self-awareness. And self-awareness is about recognizing how other people receive you, as
Hmm.
much as it is about becoming aware of what's going on inside you. So, in my mind, the core message is from the book is not that it's a sales book, but it's a way of helping salespeople become the kind of seller buyers are relieved to meet and want to take their call. Would that be a fair summary?
That's
Yeah,
perfect.
love it.
That's perfect.
Excellent. We can stop on that then. So just
Yes.
before you go, first of all, thank you both very much. Before you go, if you had a golden ticket and you could go back to your idiot 23-year-old self and whisper in Peter's ear, what one choice bit of advice would you give him that you know he would have ignored but would have benefited from?
Really trust yourself. There was a lot of anxiety about, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing it? But it's just like, I was actually more of like, just trust myself.
And Tom, if you had the same golden ticket but you could whisper in Peter's ear.
Yeah, trust your better instincts. Everyone thinks sales has got to be all these like clever tactics. It's like, no, it's like be the good human you are and treat people the way you want to be treated. That's good salesmanship.
Excellent. Peter Cleary, Tom Stearns, thank you both very much.
Thank you, Marcus.
Marcus, thank you.
So this is Marcus Cauchi signing off once again from the Inquisitor podcast. If you found this insightful, enjoyable, then please get hold of Graphic Sales, How to Build a Prospecting Playbook, available at all good bookstores, and get in touch with Peter or Tom, get in touch with me. I've loved this conversation, and what I love about the book is it doesn't lecture salespeople. It helps them recognize themselves, laugh at the madness, and God knows there is a lot of insanity, and then do the work better. So if you're listening and wants to prospect with better stories, feel less alone on the job, and find a way to use humor to alleviate some of the scars, then I can't recommend the book highly enough. And in the meantime, stay safe and happy selling. Bye-bye.
Right.